the life and legacy of the commander of the faithfuls, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salam, the first man in Islam, the cousin of the Prophet, his son-in-law, the first defender and supporter of the Prophet. We will discuss his sacrifice and his contributions over 30 episodes. So please join me. I'm your brother, Moustafa Qazwini. Assalamu alaikum. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. All our praise and gratitude are due to Him. He is our creator, our cherisher, and our sustainer. May His peace and blessings be upon all the messengers and upon our beloved Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and upon his pure family and his immaculate and righteous companions. May the blessing of the Lord be upon you and with you, my dear brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So the Prophet, after making this decisive declaration on the day of Ghadir, he wanted to consolidate and reaffirm his community of this appointment, the appointment of Imam Ali to his succession. He wanted to consolidate that through his speeches, sayings, and also his deeds. Because the Prophet knew that he had a very limited time in life, only about 2 months or 70 days. And that issue was really bothering him. The Prophet could foresee the mutiny, the disobedience, the division in his community. God had informed him. And God did mention this in the Holy Quran. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِن مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقَلَبْتُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِكُمْ. If Muhammad dies or is murdered, do you go back on your heels? Do you return to the age of ignorance? So the Prophet was worried about that, and he was keen on readdressing this issue in every important occasion. He expressed his worries in some of his ahadith, some of his sayings. He asked them the following: أن تستخلفوا عليا وما أراكم فاعلين. I'm asking you to follow Ali. Allow him to be the caliph. Do not obstruct the course of justice. Do not rebel against him. Do not marginalize him. And I know you are not going to listen to me. وَمَا أَرَاكُمْ فَاعِلِينَ. If you allow him to be the caliph, تَجِدُوهُ هَادِيًا مَهْدِيًا يَحْمِلُكُمْ عَلَى الْمَحَجَّةِ الْبَيْضَاءِ. You will find him a guided and a guide, and he will carry you upon the straight path, upon the path of truth and justice. Sa'ad ibn Ibadah, one of the leaders, or the main leader of Ansar, the helpers of the Prophet, from the tribe of Khazraj, he said to a group of people. فوالله لقد سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يقول إذا أنا مت تظل الأهواء بعدي ويرجع الناس على أعقابهم فالحق يومئذ مع علي. Once I die, people are going to go back on their heels. People are going to go into the misguidance direction. But the truth remains with Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then the Prophet kept repeating Hadith al-Thaqalain, the two weighty things, which is the Book of God and his family. He kept reminding his community about them. So these are part of his sayings. In another place, the Prophet said, أيها الناس, when he came to Medina, يوشك أن أقبض قبضا سريعا. I am going to be taken. My soul is going to be taken soon. فينطلق بي, and I am going to be taken to my Lord. وقدمت إليكم القول معذرة إليكم. I leave no room for confusion. I have told you this before. ألا إني مخلف فيكم كتاب الله عز وجل وعترتي أهل بيتي. I'm leaving behind the book of God and my family. Then he holds the hand of Ali and say, هذا علي مع القرآن والقرآن مع علي لا يفترقان حتى يرد علي الحوض. This man is with the book and the book is with this man. They are not going to depart until they reach the pond of Kawthar. So these were part of his sayings, reaffirmation that he made about the decision, the divine decision of appointing Ali after the Prophet. Now some people say, what is the big deal about this? Why the Prophet keeps saying this? And what is the big deal about, Khilafah? Any person can become caliph. No, my friends, not any person can become caliph or emir or a president or a prime minister. Look at our countries. Look at America. Doesn't it make a difference when someone is qualified and competent and democratic and he has sanity and civility and education, when he becomes a president, from someone who lacks all these things? You don't see the difference? You don't see the difference in conduct? You see the difference in everything, in politics, in economy, even in social life. Even when you come to the people of that country, you see their spirits are different, their psyche becomes different. A president ruling them. If the president is very hopeful, is optimistic, energetic, positive, qualified, encouraging, people are going to be fine. People are going to be okay. People are going to be happy and optimistic. If the president or the prime minister is disappointing, pessimistic, he speaks nonsense, people's spirit is going to be down. So definitely it makes a difference. It makes a big difference who the president is. The personality of the president and the caliph and the emir and the prime minister reflects on his own people, on his own society. It makes a difference, yes. Don't tell me it doesn't. Otherwise, God could have chosen anyone from the street to be a prophet. Why should he choose someone like Jesus or Moses or Abraham or Muhammad? He could have chosen anyone in the street. He tells them, listen, take my message, just deliver it and go. But he didn't do that. It was a painstakingly difficult selection. Istafa, God chose. Chose meaning with wisdom, not arbitrarily, not randomly, with wisdom. He chose specific leaders with great qualities to lead the nations, to bring them the message, to be a role model. The same thing after the prophets. They have successors. The message does not die. The prophet may die, but the message doesn't die. Those leaders who come after him should possess the same qualities. So here the prophet was preparing for this peaceful transition. He intended to make it peaceful transition. So when he dies, Imam Ali assumes leadership. So with the commands of his Lord, he asked all companions to leave the city of Medina. The Prophet knew that he is dying soon. He did not want any of his companions to stay in Medina while he's dying, except Imam Ali, to prevent commotion, to prevent fitna and mutiny from taking place. So the Prophet sent them, or he tried to dispatch them, though they didn't listen, to the north of Medina, to the border with the Roman Empire. Because there was a possibility of invasion by the Romans. So he established an army and he appointed a young man, very young, Usama ibn Zayd, to be the leader of that army. And he asked all of them to leave, not to stay. So once they are there and the Prophet dies, this peaceful transition is going to take place. Ali is going to be the caliph, the leader. And then they come back and Ali is the leader. So there is no conflict over leadership. But they refused. They refused to go. The Prophet was on deathbed. He opens his eyes. They are still there. He said, "Didn't I ask you to leave Medina?" He kept reminding them. أنفذوا بعث أسامة. Ba'th means expedition, military expedition. أنفذوا. Go with it. Execute it and go. And then he was angry when they didn't listen to him. He said, لعن الله من تخلف عن بعث أسامة. May God never embrace in His mercy those who stay behind and don't listen to me. And they don't go in Osama's expedition. Again, nobody listened. It was only 3 days before his death. Or maybe 4 days. It was Thursday. 4 days after that, Monday, the Prophet dies. So the Thursday before it, the last Thursday of the life of the Prophet. He's on his deathbed in his house. They all gathered around him. He opened his eyes. He said, "Why are you here? Didn't I ask you to leave? I want you to leave. Don't worry about me. Just leave with the expedition. I asked you to leave Medina." They didn't listen. They didn't leave. He kept opening his eyes and they are still sitting there. So that was a disobedience. Then when the Prophet realized that they are not going to listen to him, which was very painful. When a person works 23 years to build a community based on social justice and piety and good manners. And now, few days before his death, he finds his community that he spent time on them and his effort and his life are not listening. It becomes very painful, my friends. So he said, "Ituni bidawatin wa qirtas," or "Ituni bikatif," different narrations. Simply means pen and paper. لأكتب لكم كتابا لن تضلوا بعدي أبدا. So I write my will, final will. And once you implement this final will, you are not going to be lost or confused or misguided. Again, they realize that the Prophet is going to write in his will the succession of Imam Ali. So they refused to give him. Some people said, let's give him. Others said, no, we don't give him. And one of them, and the story is mentioned in all books, my friends. This is not a secret. Sahih al-Bukhari mentions the story at least 7 times in 7 different locations. So there was some disagreement. There was some commotion. Some people say, let's give him. Others say, no, we don't give him. Hasbuna kitab Allah. We have the book of God among us. So we don't need what he's going to leave behind. We don't need his will. Everything we look for is found in God's book, which was more disappointing and heartbreaking to the Prophet and also insulting. He was denied at the last hours of his life. The Prophet of Islam, the Messenger of God, was denied the right to give his will, to leave his will behind, written one. Otherwise, he said it many times, but he wanted to document that. They refused. فَكَثُرَ اللَّغَطُ عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Bukhari says, there was lots of commotion, disagreement, and lots of noises. The Prophet said, it's not befitting that you fight among yourselves while your Prophet is on deathbed. إِلَيْكُمْ عَنِّي. Please leave my room. قُومُوا عَنِّي. Leave me alone. Obviously, he was very angry. One of them said, لَقَدْ غَلَبَهُ الْوَجَعُ. He's overwhelmed with pain. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It wasn't a happy ending at all. It was a very sad ending. That after 23 years, this is how some people return the favor to the Prophet of Islam. But of course, there were other companions who were loyal, who were steadfast, who were pious, who were very respectful of their leader, their Prophet. Now, if you want to know the names, the books of history are available. I really cannot say further than that. These are only headlines. But the details, you have to do your own homework. And then, a few days later, only 3 or 4 days, it was Monday, when the Prophet the pain and the suffering increased, and his death came very close. So the Prophet was asking, the Prophet ﷺ was asking, أين أخي ادعوا لي أخي وصاحبي. Call me my brother and my companion. So Lady Aisha asked for her dad to come. The Prophet said, and Lady Hafsa asked for her dad to come. فَلَمَّا, and I am reading exactly what is written in the books of history. تاريخ الطبري. This is تاريخ الطبري. فاجتمعوا عنده جميعا فقال صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم انصرفوا فإن تك لي حاجة أبعث إليكم. He said to Abu Bakr and Umar, you may go. If I need you, I will call you. And then Imam Ali was called. He came, he sat next to the Prophet. The Prophet gave him his last will. And he asked him, Ali, you do not leave me until you put me in my grave. After my death, you are the one who washes my body and shrouds my body with kafan and pray over my body, and then take me to my room and bury me there, and you don't leave me. Stay with me, Ali, because he knew Ali is going to honor this will. He's not going to leave the Prophet, not even for a second. That way, that day was a day of pain and anguish in Medina. He said to Ali, Ya Ali, when my soul is out, put your hand on my face. When you feel my soul is out, umrurha ala wajhik, pass it over your face, and then put me towards the Qibla and take care of my affairs after my death. And this is what happened. Imam Ali alayhi salam was with the Prophet, as the Prophet was with him at the time of his birth. Now, after many decades, Imam Ali stands next to the Prophet at the most difficult time in his life, before his final departure. Once the Prophet dies, Imam Ali says, عَظَّمَ اللَّهُ لَكُمُ الْأَجْرِ. May Allah increase the reward for you, بِنَبِيِّكُمْ, with the departure of your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.